Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today's technique video is this stamping on a book page. So this is a real page from a copy of A Christmas Carol, which I have here, which I bought secondhand on eBay. It's got nicely yellow old pages. I don't know when this book came from. Apparently it belonged to Dylan Smee. 2014, so it's over 10 years old. So the page is nice and yellow, and what we've done, we've stamped on top of it. We've then painted the area in white acrylic. We've let that dry, then we've stamped again, heat embossed, and then we've coloured with Arteza watercolour pens. Now I'm lifting this up so you can just see and admire the shine on this. So where we've heat embossed twice, you can see that there's a really lovely shine on the black, and we've also put the white slightly outside the edges on purpose so that it kind of highlights the figure. We've then coloured it with Arteza watercolour pens. So there's a myriad of different ways you could colour this. Because you've got that white acrylic background, you can colour with alcohol markers or watercolours. So this is a technique video. If you're interested in how I did this, stay tuned and I will show you the whole process. Thanks. Okay, let's get started. So we've got here a book. I bought this secondhand off eBay. It's a copy of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And the idea is I'm going to rip a page out here, which is sad, I know, but it's a secondhand book. And I'm going to stamp onto the page. So I'm just carefully ripping it out. There we go. So put that on one side. I'm then going to take my stamping platform, and I'm going to open that up and put the page in my stamping platform. Now, this is a kind of important part. So what we're going to do is we're going to stamp onto this. We're then going to paint it with white acrylic, let it dry. We're then going to stamp onto it again so we get a nice crisp image on top of the white acrylic. Then we're going to colour it. So the stamp I'm going to use is this one. It's a lovely Christmas figure, a little bird. You can get it from That's Crafty. It's a Sharon Bates stamp. So I'm going to do that kind of there, slightly offset, probably put the sentiment down the bottom. So making sure that my stamping platform is on the rubber setting, which it is. Just going to close that down, and then I'm just going to use a anti-static bag because there could be grease and all sorts of stuff on the page. So I'm just going to go over that with my anti-static bag. Right, I'm not going to do anything fancy in terms of ink. I'm just using a basic VersaFine Onyx Black, which is my standard stamping ink. So just going to ink up my stamp. And I've obviously cut this out. This is a foam mounted stamp. You can now get this. They are clear now. They used to be red rubber, but now they're available from That's Crafty. Same designs with more sentiments actually than you got originally. But you can still get this. It's a Sharon Bates design and it's absolutely beautiful to colour. It makes a really beautiful card. Kind of looks like that when it's finished. That's how I colour it. But obviously you've got lots of choices in terms of colouring. So I'm just giving that a good press. Bearing in mind this is old paper because this is quite an old book. You can see by how brown it is. So I'm just letting that ink really soak in. Just having a look at that. I think I'm going to give it another go. So I'm just going to give it another little coat of ink onto the stamp and then stamp it again. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so we are stamped. Right, I'm going to take that out of my platform because I am going to heat emboss it. I've got my ultra fine wow clear emboss powder here, and I'm just going to give that just a little shake in the powder. I'm heating up my embossing tool just to get some heat in the gun before I'm going to heat emboss that. Now the reason we heat emboss it is just to set that black. So I'm just heating up my tool and then I'm just going to go straight in. Now I'm leaving my stamp in its position on the platform because I'm going to put this back into my platform. I'm going to paint it with the white acrylic. I'm then going to let it dry and then I'm going to stamp it again. So I don't want to move my stamp because it'll still be, in theory, in the same place. Right, I'm just heating this gently because obviously this is quite thin paper compared to what we normally work on. So I'm still going to do the front and back just to make sure that's completely dry. There we go. By doing that as well, it helps flatten it. Right, so there we go. There's our image done. So I'm going to put that back into the platform. In theory, this should be in the same place. Just making sure it's kind of lined up. There we go. So I think we're back in what should be roughly the right position. You never quite know, but hopefully this will work out. So I've now got just some very basic white acrylic paint. This was from, I think, the range, or no, I think the works maybe. It's just a very basic white acrylic. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of that out onto an acrylic block. And then I'm just going to take a small paintbrush. Let me just find something that's about the right size. There we go. So I've just got a basic paintbrush there. Now I'm going to put a tiny little bit of water, not much, and then I'm just going to thin that paint down a slightly bit. Now I'm going to paint using the brush, and I've got to paint everywhere, but I'm going to be painting over it. But I'm not only going to paint just inside, I'm going to paint slightly outside as well, so that when we stamp again, we've got a little shimmer almost round. So I'm just going to do that, and it's going to look really strange because I'm going to paint over it, but that's kind of the idea. So I'm actually going to paint over the top, and the idea of the heat embossing as well is to set the ink, because if I didn't do that as I'm painting, I could be getting a white turn into black. So I'm just going to go over that. Don't be shy on the amount of paint you use. Just following the lines, but as I say, going slightly outside. So my suggestion is to do the image slightly outside, and don't scrimp, because the reason for doing the white is that gives us a lighter colour to colour against. I'm going to kind of do the body first. There we go. But you want to kind of smooth it out, so don't leave great big lumps of paint. Just try and smooth that out as you go. Apologies if this is kind of struggling to focus because I'm got my paintbrush in the way, but I need to see what I'm doing, unfortunately. There we go. So I'm just going slightly outside, and again here where the headphones are. This is a really adorable image. It really is, and it makes such lovely cards. I've done several of this design this year. Right, now I'm going to go around a second time just to kind of smooth out, but also just get a little bit more of the white. Now, this is the point where you kind of need to decide what you're going to do about your edging. Are you going to go for kind of jagged, or are you going to go kind of smooth? I quite like the slightly jagged look. And it's quite nice as well on a Christmas card that the backing page is something Christmas related, which is why I specifically bought a copy of A Christmas Carol, because that's a lovely Christmas story that most people would recognise. There we go. So I'm just going to go around, just evening that up, and also just going slightly outside, flattening as I go. There we go. And that's kind of, it's coming flat. It looks a bit bumpy at the moment, but I think that will dry okay. Don't forget, we're obviously going to stamp on it again, and then we're going to colour it. So hopefully that will cover up the sins. Now the legs, just going to kind of roughly do. And these little kneecaps, as I'm calling them. Do birds have kneecaps? I'm not really sure. Just going to go down. You can see I just made a little mistake there, and I just took it off with my finger. So just down there, and then across the bottom as well, where we've got a little bit of ground. I've put far too much paint on my block, haven't I? I'm just going to go over the legs again, just to get a little bit more paint on. And smooth that out. There we go, that will probably do. So unfortunately I wasted quite a lot of paint. Now we need to leave that to dry, and I would say leave it to dry naturally. Don't try and force it with a heat tool. Just let that dry normally. So I'm going to leave that to dry, and I will be back later. Right, now our bird is dry. The acrylic is completely dry. I've got the page in here, but I'm hoping it's in the right place. So I'm now going to re-ink my little character and then re-stamp him. There we go. Hey, looks good actually. Yep. Now again, I'm gonna heat emboss. Now I'm not actually sure what effect this is gonna have on the white acrylic, but it's dry, so I'm hoping the emboss powder only stays on the black ink. There we go. So that's now embossed. I'm now heating up my heat tool. While I'm doing that, I'm just going to give my stamp a clean with some water. Right, this is nice and warm now. So I will now heat emboss this. Again, I'm going quite gentle because this is quite thin paper compared to normal. This is quite interesting actually. The emboss on the white acrylic is lifting up quite a lot, so I'm going to get quite pronounced edges, but I don't mind that, it's all part of the look. There we go. So let's just heat from the other side as well. There we go. So if I lift that up, you can probably just see what I mean. You can see the edges are very, very pronounced, kind of lifted up slightly, but looks okay. So, all right, I'm going to use my water brush pens. So these are my Arteza pens, which I use a lot of the time. If you watch my videos, you'll know. And I'm going to colour him in. So I'm probably going to stay in the lighter colours because I don't want anything too dark. So we're going to be putting water on this. It's got the white acrylic on it, so I'm hoping it's okay, but I'm not going to go too heavy. So I'm going to start off by just laying down a little bit of colour just around the edges. And I've got to be a little bit careful here because I'm not actually cutting him out. There's no forgiving. So you can see what happens here. When you put the colour down on the white, everything ends up being lighter and it thins the colour out. So this is definitely going to be one of those where you need to put lots of layers. So I'm just grabbing some kitchen towel there. So I'm gonna just colour around the edges, focusing where Sharon has given us the clue in terms of the colour. But you can see I'm doing it very gently, quite easily, not stressing, just kind of bringing that colour in. And I will go over again. If you watched my NQY video on my YouTube channel, you'll know what that technique is all about, and I will be using that technique on this. There we go. So let that, add a layer, let it dry a little bit, add another layer. This is kind of a slow process. We're building up that colour gradually. So sometimes I'm washing it out, other times I'm kind of leaving it and just dotting around it to just blend it in with what we've already laid down. You'll find it's different on white acrylic than it is when you colour normally, but that's all part of the fun of this technique. There we go. So there's our first colour. I've done him in a light brown, but I'm going to do something quite strange with the breast. I'm going to do kind of like a purple colour. So this is a sort of a purple indigo blue type colour. Just going to go around the edges. And as I say, you'll find it sits slightly differently on this white acrylic than it does normally. You can certainly feel the difference. So I'm just pulling that colour in. You'll get really subtle colours when you do this technique. So you'll find you have to add layers if you want anything resembling a deep colour. But I think it looks amazing when it's finished. There we go. And if you want more colour in one place, just leave that colour. Otherwise, blend it out. But as I said before, you need layers, so keep layering. There we go. And also the other thing I find as well with this technique, don't use too much water. Use your water brush, but don't squeeze it. Just keep going with the brush. There we go, adding another little layer on top. And you'll find if you put this on while it's still wet, you get a different effect than when it dries. So just going in there. Using a mixture of different techniques. Sometimes brushing it out, other times just dotting it. If you dot it, more of the colour remains, you get a darker colour. You kind of paint with it, you'll see it smooths out and you end up losing quite a lot of that pigment. There we go. So it's a very interesting technique. It's worth trying just to kind of experience it. Right, so we're going to do the wings, I think, in the same colour blue. So I'm going to put the blue against the body, fading out towards the edges, and then we'll just blend that out. There we go. So I'll start down the bottom, pick some of the colour up, blend it in. Again, start in the colour and end up away from the colour. So we get slightly darker effect nearer the body. And again, add another layer, not quite yet. Remembering our NQY, just so that we end up with layers and depth, which is what we're trying to achieve. So I'm just going to blend that in, but not take all that colour away. Again on this side. There we go. I have tried this with alcohol pens and it does work as well. It's a slightly different looking effect, but it still works. I'm going to go for kind of jarring colours here. So I'm going to colour the pocket in green. And then I'm going to do the tie mostly in green. Now this one, you can see I'm actually just colouring it directly on with the pen. I don't want to water this one down because I want quite vibrant colour. So going for quite a different look with this. Just literally painting that on with the actual water brush. So I'm going to go down the tie and then I'm going to colour these little bits around in a matching kind of paisley colour. So I'm going to go for a purple on this outer ring. and then something inside, maybe a blue, a very different shade of blue. There we go. Now, I'm going to just pop a little bit of blue onto my mat, and I'm going to just put a tiny little blue in the eye. There we go. Now, the headphones. What colour should we do the headphones? We want something vibrant and bright. I think bright red. Why not go for red? Something quite eye-catching, because all the other colours are quite muted. So let's go in there with our red. You see what I mean? Everything ends up being a lighter shade. So quite a bright mid-red ends up being almost like a peachy orange. You have to kind of tone up everything, basically. And then we'll go in for a reddy brown. No, in fact, we're not going to do that because that pen is dried up. Maybe a darker brown. Yeah, there we go, that works. On the outer bit of the headphones. And then maybe a petrol-y blue. Yeah. There we go. And now we need a colour to go across the top. This has got quite a lot of embossed powder on it, so you don't get much colour from it, but you can just see a little hint of colour in the background there. There we go. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is just add a tiny little bit of brown in these knees. There we go. Now, looking at that, I think this needs a little bit more. So actually what I'm going to do is get a slightly darker brown. This one is kind of a mid brown, it's chocolate. And I'm just going to go kind of around the edges. So you can see I'm just dotting and dabbing just in places. And I will water this. But I think that's just looking a little bit too faint at the moment. I want a bit more texture. Remember our NQY technique of keep adding just a little bit more, just a little bit more. There we go. So I'm making sure my brush is clean. Just cleaning it on my paper towel there. And then I'm just going to go in, but I'm leaving quite a bit of that colour. This is a bird, so it's naturally textured anyway. It wouldn't have a smooth effect because it would have feathers, funnily enough. So that sort of dotty effect works quite well. And then similarly down here, just going to go over what I've laid down and then pull it out. As the ink kind of wears out on my water pen, it naturally fades the colour out. Similarly over here. And there we go. And we've got a little waterline there, but that doesn't really matter. We can blend it out if we want, but that all adds to the overall effect. And the very last thing to do, I think, is give the bird a beak. So we're just going to paint that in an orange, and true to form, that takes it a little bit down. So I'm then going to go in again with a slightly darker orange, which I've got here. There we go, a little bit more noticeable. There we go. So that's looking quite good. I might just do a few little more bits there, maybe slightly different blue on some of those edge bits. Just to give more texture, more depth. Keep drying your water brush, don't let too much water go on. There we go. So there is our little bird. So you can see he's got quite a nice little white outline on the page, and hopefully you're getting the full effect there. But he looks quite good. So he's very glistening. The black is very glossy. It's not come too much through on the other side actually, but it looks quite good. So I will finish him off. I'll probably dirty the edges a little bit, maybe rip this down a little bit more and then finish him onto a card. But that's the technique I wanted to show you. We've stamped, we've used white acrylic on top, let that dry. We've stamped again, heat embossing both times, and then we've just painted him with watercolor pens. So you can see it's quite an interesting little technique. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you have, give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe to my channel. Lots of other videos on there about different techniques like this. If you're interested, go and have a look, and I appreciate it, and I'll speak to you soon.